Hey everyone. So, have you ever had this happen? You find the perfect thing online, but it's out of stock at your local store, only to see it's on a huge clearance sale 50 miles away? Yeah, that frustration, it's right at the heart of one of the biggest, most expensive challenges in retail today, getting the right stuff to the right place at the right time. So today, we're going to unpack the solution: dynamic multi-store inventory optimization. Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the core problem itself. Then, we'll explore how a total shift in perspective to a full network view changes the entire game. After that, we'll see how AI is making inventory truly intelligent, peek under the hood of the optimization engine, and finally, we'll get to the bottom line, weighing the real-world costs and benefits. All right, first up, let's really dig into that paradox. You know the one. We've all felt it as shoppers, and believe me, retailers are wrestling with it every single day.
So, why does this happen? Well, it's not just bad luck. It's actually a systemic issue, a really costly breakdown in the supply chain where all the products are in the system. They're just completely mismatched with what people actually want locally. This leads to lost sales on one end and super expensive markdowns on the other. And just how big of a problem are we talking about? Well, on average, retailers are looking at an out-of-stock rate of nearly 8%. Think about that. That's almost 1 out of every 10 products a customer is looking for, just not there. For a big retailer, that translates into millions, sometimes even billions in lost revenue every single year. So what's actually causing this massive mismatch? Well, a lot of it comes from something called the Bullwhip Effect. And this image here shows it perfectly. See that small, tiny change in customer sales way over on the end? Just watch what happens. It creates these progressively larger and larger swings in orders as you move back up the supply chain, all the way to the manufacturers. It's wild. And this crazy distortion happens because each part of that chain, the store, the regional warehouse, the national distribution center, is basically just trying to optimize for itself. They're all making their own forecasts, placing orders in big batches, and all of that just creates noise and amplifies every little change. It leads to massive inefficiencies and tons of unnecessary costs across the entire system. So how in the world do you tame that bullwhip? Well, the top retailers, they solve this by completely changing how they look at the problem. They stop focusing on individual stores and start seeing their entire network as one single system. They do this with a strategy called Multi-Echelon Inventory Optimization, or MEIO. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Instead of each store and warehouse doing its own thing, MEIO coordinates all the inventory decisions across all the levels, or echelons, at the same time. You can think of an echelon as just one stop on a product's journey, from the factory to a big national warehouse to a smaller regional one, and then finally to the store shelf. Here's a good way to think about it. The old way is kind of like each musician in an orchestra playing their own tune. It's chaos. MEIO, on the other hand, is the conductor, making sure every single section is perfectly in sync to create one beautiful performance. It treats the whole supply chain like one interconnected organism. But just seeing the whole picture isn't really enough in the world we live in today. I mean, things move so fast. The real magic happens when you make that system intelligent, when it can learn and adapt in real time. A one-time plan, it's basically obsolete the second you make it. Customer demand shifts, new promotions launch, shipping times change. The goal is to get away from that static set it and forget it mindset and move to a dynamic model that's constantly adjusting to what's happening right now. And this is where things get really, really cool. This is where AI and machine learning step in to become the brains of the whole operation. You can see in this workflow here, the system is in a constant loop. It's always collecting data, forecasting demand, optimizing inventory, and then all of that information feeds right back into the system so it can learn and get better. It's a self-improving cycle. And these AI systems are, frankly, remarkably good at what they do. I mean, you're seeing accuracy rates hitting around 90% for things like demand forecasting and even higher for the actual inventory optimization. That's a level of precision that is just impossible for humans or older systems to get anywhere close to at this kind of scale. So, we've covered the what and the why. Now it's time to pop the hood and see how this dynamic engine actually works. What are the core pieces that make this thing run? A successful MEIO strategy is really built on 5 key pillars. It all starts with having a crystal clear map of your entire supply network. Then you need accurate, data-driven forecasting. From there, you figure out the optimal stock levels everywhere. You streamline how you order, and underpinning the whole thing, you have a powerful foundation of data and analytics for every single decision.
Now, to put this all into practice, companies follow a scalable framework, kind of like this one. It's a very disciplined process. It starts with defining your scope, collecting all the data. But look, here's the most critical part. Number 3, data preparation. This can often take up more than half of the entire project's time because you know what they say, garbage in, garbage out. Getting this step right is absolutely essential if you want a model that gives you truly optimized results.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly powerful, I know, but it also sounds really complex. So, what's the actual bottom line impact of putting a system like this in place? What's the real payoff?
The results can be just staggering. In one case study with a grocery retailer, putting MEIO in place, even with just updating it once a year, slashed their total inventory value by a massive 40%. 40%! Just think about how much capital that is no longer just sitting on shelves and in warehouses. And by tailoring their strategy to different kinds of products, that same retailer freed up $7.8 million in working capital. That's a 53% reduction from where they started. That's real money that can be put right back into growing the business. But this is where it gets even more interesting. The research shows that it's not just about whether you optimize, but how often you do it. This quote here from MIT really highlights that the frequency of your updates is one of the most critical levers for unlocking more savings. And this chart shows you exactly what they mean. Just look at this. Simply moving from an annual update to a biannual one, just twice a year, creates this huge drop in how much inventory you need. And as you get more frequent, quarterly, monthly, even weekly, the required inventory just keeps falling because the system is reacting that much faster to what's happening in the real world. But this brings us to the crucial trade-off, and honestly, it's one of the most important takeaways from this whole thing. As the savings curve shows, the biggest jump in savings comes from those first few increases in frequency. After that, you start hitting a point of diminishing returns. Yeah, each update still saves money, but not quite as much as the one before it. So what this means is that companies have a real strategic choice to make. On one hand, you've got more frequent updates. That means you're more responsive, you have lower inventory costs, but it also costs more to run and requires more automation. On the other hand, you have less frequent updates. They're cheaper and simpler, but you carry more risk of being out of sync with your customers. And that leaves us with the ultimate question for any retailer. It's not about finding one single best answer that fits everyone. It's about finding the right balance for your specific products and what your company can realistically handle. The goal is to find that sweet spot on the curve where you're maximizing your savings without creating a system that's impossible to manage, and in doing so, turning your inventory into a true strategic advantage.